Carmelo Anthony is putting up the worst defensive season of his 15-year NBA career in his first season in Oklahoma City. Charles Krupa, AP. When the Oklahoma City Thunder traded for Carmelo Anthony on the eve of training camp, it felt like a perfect fit, transitioning into the back end of his career. The idea of pairing Anthony Long, one of the game's best solo scorers, with younger stars Russell Westbrook and Paul George would remove the burden of shouldering the biggest load on a team. In theory, the arrangement would allow him to become Olympic Melo, the devastatingly effective version of Anthony that played a huge part on the gold medal-winning U.S. Olympic teams in both 2008 and 2012, and to a lesser extent in 2016. In practice, though, it hasn't worked out that way. The nadir of a frustrating season for Anthony might have come Sunday night in a 108-105 loss to the Portland Trail Blazers in Oklahoma City. Anthony missed all 4 of his shots in the fourth quarter, all threes, including a potential game-tying jumper in the dying seconds. He also committed a turnover after being double-teamed in the corner on the previous possession. His final line, 6 points on 3 for 13 shooting, including misses on all 5 of his 3-point attempts, leaves Anthony with an average of 16.5 points per game at 40.5% from the field and a player efficiency rating of 12.74. All easily career lows. Sunday's dud capped an awful week that featured 6 points on 2 for 8 shooting in a win over Miami, and missing 2 free throws in the final 10 seconds in Boston that would have guaranteed a win but instead opened the door for the Celtics to pull off a 100-99 victory. Anthony's poor shooting night against Portland, coupled with defensive miscues late in the game, led to questions for Thunder coach Billy Donovan about why he played Anthony over Jeremy Grant. Down the stretch afterward, Donovan's answer that he has faith in Anthony doesn't matter. The fact that he had to answer the question at all spoke volumes about the way Anthony's season in Oklahoma City has gone. It also speaks to a pair of questions people around the NBA have been asking throughout the year. Is this Anthony, at age 33, falling off a cliff? Or was this just a far worse fit than expected? I've adjusted, Anthony said a month ago after another rough game. 14 points on 6 for 17 shooting in a blowout loss at Golden State. I'm settled in. I'm adjusted pretty well. Pretty good. To be able to accept the role this team needs for me to be successful. Obviously I've accepted that, but the willingness to accept that, and set everything aside for the sake of trying to win, that's a good feeling. There's little doubt Anthony was willing to accept a lesser role in Oklahoma City. He had to agree to the trade from the Knicks thanks to his no-trade clause. So it's not like the presence of Westbrook and George, both of whom recruited him hard, was a surprise. And while Anthony had no interest in coming off the bench, a sentiment that became an internet meme, he hasn't grumbled despite his shot attempts and usage rates falling further than at any point in his 15-year career. Part of that comes with the understanding that all 3 of the team's stars arrived after the Thunder's 2 major summer trades, that it would take time to make things work. Even being around Paul and Russell in the summertime, there was an understanding that they weren't going to hit the ground running. Donovan said, it was going to be different for both of them, and the commitment they made to themselves and the team was to work every day to get better, knowing every day wasn't going to be smooth. They've been able to stick to that because of the relationship that's been built with them personally. And when Carmelo joined the team, the same thing happened. We're going to work through whatever we have to work through to learn to play with one another. And I don't think they've fallen back on that. But no matter how strong the trio's relationship is, Anthony's fit in Oklahoma City hasn't been nearly as seamless as it was anticipated by most it would be. So what has been the problem? Maybe the entire idea of Olympic Melo being transferable to the NBA to begin with was inherently flawed. Anthony has been dominant in international play, with a large part of his success at that level coming from taking and making lots of threes. But while he has shot 41% from behind the arc in the Olympics, that's from the international three-point line, set 22 feet 2 inches from the hoop. In the NBA, the three-point line is 23 feet 9 inches away, and Anthony is a career 34.7% three-point shooter. Multiple scouts who've seen Anthony play recently noted the difference. They aren't surprised that while he's taking more threes than ever this year, 6 per game, he's only making 35.5% of them. Additionally, Anthony now has to get his shots in a very different way. He might be happy adjusting to his new role, and multiple scouts suggested that it could be a better fit after he has a full off-season to commit himself as opposed to being thrown into it at the start of training camp and learning on the fly. But even Anthony acknowledged the difficulty of transforming from a guy who is used to having the ball all the time to primarily a catch-and-shoot player. The biggest challenge, I would say, is not having the ball 75–80% of the time in the game, he said with a smile. When asked what's been toughest about his new role, "I'm in different places on the court, doing different things. The way the game is now, things are spaced out in pick and rolls and driving and shooting threes. That's a big adjustment, but I've adjusted." But has he successfully adjusted? The answer has to be no. For the first time in his career, that's not happening. According to Synergy Sports data, Anthony is using 23.9% of his possessions in spot-up opportunities. That is, by far, the biggest percentage of his career, his previous high being 15.4%. It's also the first time his top play type isn't either isolations or post-ups. Meanwhile, he's shooting just 36.8%, 105 for 285, on those spot-up opportunities. "He's a streak shooter," said one scout. "He's a rhythm player. He needs the ball, even though it stops with him." Anthony has hardly ever been considered a good defensive player, even in his prime. So if he's going to be a negative offensively, questions as to why he's playing over a guy such as Grant are understandable, even if they will never be met with an affirmative answer by Donovan or the Thunder. "I just don't think he fits," said one league executive. "The problem for the Thunder is that he isn't going anywhere. Anthony has a player option for next season worth $27.9 million. That seems a virtual lock to be picked up, regardless of what George decides to do when he tests free agency this summer. Even if George leaves, Anthony could still stay in Oklahoma City with Westbrook, rendering the Thunder far from irrelevant. Should he decide to go somewhere else, it would require him taking a massive pay cut, both for performance reasons and the fact that there are so few teams with available cap space. Carmelo now at his best, and this isn't taking anything away from his prior accomplishments. He's a bench guy, the same executive said, but Oklahoma City didn't trade for Anthony and take on a massive tax burden for him to be a bench player. The Thunder brought him into play alongside Westbrook, George and Steven Adams as the core of a quickly retooled roster that can immediately contend in the Western Conference. The Thunder does sit in fourth in the West with 7 games to go, and the team looked like it had a pretty high ceiling as a unit before Andre Robertson was lost for the year. But Oklahoma City hasn't reached that point because of Anthony's contributions. Instead, it's happened while people are questioning where he fits and what his role should be. Carmelo Anthony may have made the proper mental adjustments. Physically, though, it's just not working. And with that, the chances of Oklahoma City making the kind of playoff run it expected after the trade have decreased. Read more on the NBA. After sitting most of the season, Markelle Fultz makes surprise return to 76ers lineup. Stephen Curry hopes to prove Steve Kerr wrong on his recovery time. Greg Popovich praises March for Our Lives Kids. Rips Trump and politicians. You want kids to feel safe. Ben Simmons wears March for Our Lives shirt. DeMarcus Cousins offers to pay for funeral of Sacramento man shot by police.